back. Today I'm going to be talking about 14 common beginner leopard gecko mistakes. So it can be really easy for beginner leopard gecko owners to make these mistakes because there is not that much good information out there about leopard geckos because there is not that much known about them in the wild. So it's really easy to get misinformation about them and end up making these mistakes. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. The first one is buying your leopard gecko from a pet store. So a lot of new leopard gecko owners buy their leopard geckos from pet stores because it's cheaper, and I did too, but there are two main reasons that you should not buy your leopard gecko from a pet store. The first one is a lot of pet stores don't really care for their leopard geckos that well, and you could end up with a leopard gecko that is sick, and you do not want to deal with that. The next one is most pet stores source their reptiles from reptile mills, which are basically big companies that just breed reptiles together with no care for their well-being, only for profit. So you do not want to be supporting that. The next mistake is taking pet store employees' advice. So I'm not saying all pet store employees are like this, but the majority of pet store employees do not know that much about reptiles, and they can definitely give you a lot of misinformation about leopard geckos, and they just are not the best place to get information from. And you should probably get your information from someone who is very experienced with them and knows a lot about them. Next one is cohabbing. So a lot of people know that two male leopard geckos should not be housed together because they are territorial, but even female leopard geckos of the same age and size can still be territorial and aggressive toward each other, and there have been a lot of people that have kept their female leopard geckos together for even years with no problems and then have them all of a sudden attack each other and really hurt each other. So it's just not a good idea to cohab under any circumstances. Next mistake is not using multivitamins. So a lot of people use calcium for their leopard geckos, and you definitely should use calcium, but you also will need multivitamins for your leopard gecko to stay healthy because calcium does not provide all a leopard gecko needs to stay healthy, so they will need multivitamin supplements tested on their insects once a week. Next one is not using a thermostat for a heat mat. So if you do not connect your heat mat to a thermostat, then there is a high chance of the heat mat overheating and possibly even burning your leopard gecko, and it can even start a fire sometimes, and you do not want to take that risk, so it is always best to buy a thermostat for your heat mat. The next mistake is buying leopard gecko starter kits. So most leopard gecko starter kits out there are not the best. They do not have enough hides, and they do not have the right equipment that a leopard gecko needs, and I just would not recommend leopard gecko starter kits. Just do your research on leopard gecko care and you can make your own setup. It might be a little bit spendier, but it definitely is worth it, and most starter kits are not the best. Next mistake is having too small of an enclosure. So baby leopard geckos can be housed in 10-gallon enclosures as a minimum, but adult leopard geckos should have at least 20 gallons. It's better to have more than that, but the minimum for an adult leopard gecko is 20 gallons, and you should not keep them in an enclosure any smaller than that. The next mistake is using calci sand. So this is basically a reptile substrate that is basically sand with calcium in it, and this is probably one of the worst substrates for leopard geckos because the leopard gecko will be able to tell that it has calcium in it, and if the leopard gecko feels like it needs calcium, it will eat the substrate and it can become impacted, which means its digestive system is blocked, and that can actually lead to death. And yeah, you do not want to use calci sand. Next mistake is not providing enough hides for your leopard gecko. So leopard geckos should have at least 3 hides. More hides are better because leopard geckos are sort of shy sometimes, and they are nocturnal, so they like to have some place to hide during the daytime, and they will feel most secure with at least 3 hides, and they should have a warm hide, cool hide and a humid hide. Next mistake is feeding too much. So this is actually more common than underfeeding. A lot of people think that their leopard gecko needs to eat like every day, and they do not. Adult leopard geckos only need to be fed like 3 times a week, and overfeeding can lead to obesity. My leopard gecko here is obese, and that's a result of me feeding her too much even when I didn't even realize it. So now she is obese and she is not losing weight very easily, so it's just not a good idea to overfeed them ever. Next mistake is using a temperature gauge. So this is the most popular way to tell the temperature in a leopard gecko cage, and they sell these at pet stores, but they are probably not the best way to tell the temperature in your cage because they are not always that accurate. The most accurate way to tell the temperature in your leopard gecko's enclosure is to use a temperature gun, and that's what I use for my leopard geckos, and they're super accurate. And yeah, I would definitely recommend that over any temperature gauge. So the next one is not doing enough research. So this is basically the reason why someone would make any of these mistakes, is not doing enough research. So before you get a leopard gecko, you should do as much research as possible so you know what you're getting yourself into. This is probably the most important thing in leopard gecko keeping. Next mistake is using red or blue heat bulbs. So these are mostly used for like night bulbs for leopard geckos, so you can see them out and about at night, but really these are not what they say. Leopard geckos actually can see them, they can see the light coming from them, but even though they cannot see the color blue or red, they can still see the light coming from the bulb, and it does not make any difference whether it's regular or whether it's blue or red. They can still see the light coming from it. The last mistake isn't as bad as the other ones. It is using reptile carpet. So I'm not saying you should never use reptile carpet, but it's definitely not the best, and your leopard gecko's claws can get stuck on it really easily, and it can harbor bacteria. Even if you clean it, it can keep bad bacteria in it, and it can possibly make your leopard gecko sick, and you do not want to deal with that. So yeah, there are definitely more mistakes that beginner leopard gecko owners make. It's very easy for them to accidentally do something wrong, but I just covered some of the main ones and try to stay away from these. And like I said before, do your research. That's the main thing in leopard gecko keeping. Those who don't do the research often end up with an unhealthy leopard gecko. So look at more than one source. Look at a bunch of different sources and try to decide for yourself what you should do. So I think that's all, guys. And if you are not subscribed already, don't forget to push that button and push the bell to get notified when I post a new video. And make sure you leave a like and a comment if you have any questions or if you just want to say something. And yeah, bye guys.